What's up, everybody? We are back with another review. Today we are talking about the brand new boomer shooter Metal Eden. If you don't know what I mean by boomer shooter, think like the Doom subgenre of like first-person shooters. That's where this falls in line, where you're just going through levels, killing the baddies, and completing a level, and then so on and so forth. This is kind of like a more sci-fi-ish. I mean, I guess you could call it Doom sci-fi, right? It kind of is, but this is more of a sci-fi Doom game, essentially, that just came out. It's $40. It's, at the time of this recording, for $35.99 on Steam. Just came out yesterday. Finished it all in one setting. It was a fun game. As usual, I have the playthrough already on YouTube. I'm going to link that down below in the description from my single-player channel, which is also linked down below if you want to watch me play single-player games. Or if you want to watch me do that live when new games come out, or on single player Sundays. I'm live on Twitch, which is also linked below, as well as all my social medias, including car social medias and car YouTube. If you're into any of that and want to support me anywhere else, any support anywhere is, of course, appreciated. But let's go ahead and get into this review. As usual, we're going to go through our cons, then our so-sos, and finish on a high note with our pros. Wrap it all up with some final thoughts and give it my rating. But starting off with the cons, first of all, the story. Now, this is a con to me. The story just wasn't super interesting to me. I have the gist of the story, but I almost just didn't really pay attention because it just wasn't that interesting. The story is essentially humans' lives or personalities or souls or minds, whatever you want to call it, are stored on cores. And they're all stored in a giant library, and there's some bad things going on, and you're trying to essentially save all of humanity's cores as you're this super powered human robot cyborg thing, and you're going through these levels to progress into the final library to save the library. And you're special because you have different technology where instead of just having one core, you can keep being uploaded to new cores, and you're essentially invincible. The story, though, just wasn't that grabbing. The writing, the characters, where you really only see one character except for the few short, except for the few short cutscenes, and then your couple of boss fights. You don't really see any of the characters except for yourself. But you do have a couple different characters that like talk to you the whole time through levels. And some people with that as a con. I don't really think that was too bad of a thing. Maybe I could have put that under so-sos because it wasn't too bad, while also giving you more narrative and story. But other than that, the writing for the characters just isn't that good. And other than that, there's not a whole lot of story. The cutscenes are pretty short. They're not too long. Maybe 30 minutes total of cutscenes. And speaking of too short, this game is just in general too short. There's like a prologue and like 8 levels. Only 2 boss fights. I finished the game, including a couple of crashes, which we'll talk about in performance. A couple of crashes and all of the cutscenes. There's like 3 hours and 44 minutes, I think, is how long my playthrough was. So it was way too short. And considering that it's $40, when a normal game is like 60 to 70, you have to decide if fun gameplay but too short of a game is worth 40 or currently like 35. But the game was too short. The story wasn't super interesting. And the story not being super interesting might appeal to some Doom players because Doom The Dark Ages came out, and a lot of the Doom player base thought there was too much story and there's too much narrative, and they just wanted to run around in their boomer shooter with a lot of action and killing all the bad guys. And so maybe for you, not having much of a story isn't a con, but I think everybody would agree that under 4 hours is a little too short of a game. Another one, and this is a very minor con, there was no ADS on your guns, which is not a big deal at all, except for one gun that you get. It has an upgrade that you can do on it, which we'll talk about the upgrades later, where you can ADS on it and use it like a sniper, although it's an SMG. But the reason I even brought this up is there's a couple guns, like your main gun that has unlimited ammo, has a hollow sight on it that you can't ADS, and it's just odd to design guns with optics on them, and then you can't use them. I just thought that was odd. And then another con, which isn't huge, because this is a small studio trying to put out an intense, beautiful-looking game, and that's except for in one cutscene, mouths never move when they're talking. Which, once again, not a big deal. We're really here for the gameplay. So the cons are the story wasn't interesting, the game was too short, there's no ADS on weapons that look like they should, and the mouths don't move. So moving on to so-sos is that there's no like home base or like home screen like in the Doom games when you go back to a home base and then you launch into missions. There's none of that. Not that big of a deal. We'll talk about why it mattered more when we talk about upgrades a little bit, because I don't want to give away my talk about upgrades, but there was just no like home base or main screen. There was menu and there was levels, and that was it. And once again, smaller studio. So, they got to cut things somewhere. So it wasn't too big of a deal. But the things that I would have wanted out of a home base or a home screen were mostly present in the game, which were the upgrades. And we'll talk about that in our pros, which we're moving into now. So the first thing is graphically, this game looks amazing. For most of this game, I played it on Epic Graphics. I was recording, streaming on Epic Graphics on anywhere from 90 to 110 FPS, depending on the scenes, and cutscenes were almost 300 FPS, which my monitor only goes to 165. And the graphics were gorgeous, beautiful, looked really good. The environments were good. The character designs were good. The enemies looked good. Everything looked really good. I thought the graphics were really good. Another pro I have on here is pace. While we're comparing this to Doom games, the pace was similar to like Doom Eternal. Fast movements, there was zip lines, there was grappling, there was like boost pads. You have a jetpack where you can dodge quickly with it, and you can jump boost, and there was a lot of movement, which I actually didn't put on here, which is another pro. The movement there was a lot of different like movement techniques to get around the map, which was a lot of fun, but the gameplay pace was really fast. And you could slow it down, but that's not really the ethos of the game, and I really enjoyed the pace. Out of the modern Doom trilogy, my favorite was Doom Eternal because of that pace. And that pace was definitely present here. Then I put performance under pros. So like I said, I was getting a lot of FPS on Epic graphic settings while recording and streaming. I do have a RTX 5700. Why am I RTX? I have a 5070. I don't know where these numbers are coming from. I have a 5070 and 9800 X3D, 64 gigabytes of RAM. So no slouch PC, of course, but not a 5090, not even a 5070 Ti. And while recording, streaming, and gaming, the lowest my FPS got was like low 90s, and I got up to around 110, and then cutscenes were peaking up to like 300. I did have one level where I crashed a couple times. I turned down the graphics from Epic to high, and then I also turned off upscaling. This is an Unreal Engine 5 game, and I've had, games have crashed where you have like upscaling on. So it's probably the upscaling, and I probably could have kept it on Epic. But just to be safe and to not have to keep diagnosing the problem while I'm trying to play through this game, I just turned off upscaling and turned it back down to high, and then I was getting 140 to 150 frames. So other than those two crashes, which I think are probably due to the upscaling, I thought the performance overall was really good. Then I also have it as unique. Now, it is a boomer shooter, which in itself is not unique, but it's a more sci-fi setting with like robot enemies that have cores in them. And the cores were kind of a unique part of the game. There's not a whole lot of super sci-fi robot jetpack fast moving boomer shooters out there. I mean, there's not a whole lot of boomer shooters that get much attention as it is. So part of the uniqueness was that, but also the core mechanic where once you damaged enemies enough, depending on the enemy or some of like the more grunt-like enemies, you could rip their core out, and then you could throw it back at other enemies and kill enemies with someone else's core because it blows up. Or you could absorb that core, and for a short period, you would get more damage, faster move speed, stronger melee, and that was pretty unique. And then also, there's these levels where you can like go into a ball, and you roll up, and you can roll through the level in the ball. In some level parts, it's necessary, like there's lava on the level, and you have an electric attack as well as rockets. And so that was pretty unique as well. And then another pro, I did forget one pro, which we'll circle back to in a second. But another pro was there's an upgrade system where you could upgrade the effects with cores, upgrade some of your like movement abilities, some of things like when you get damage, a frost blast goes out when your shields break. So there's upgrades with that, and then there's also upgrades for weapons that you had to unlock by getting kills with those weapons, and those upgrades were available. And then you would use the in-game currency called dust that you can either collect vials of, or you get them by killing enemies. And the dust was the currency for the upgrade. So I like that there's an upgrade where the no home base or home screen area, like a prep screen, kind of heard is those upgrades were only in certain areas, and maybe that's where they wanted the identity of the game, although I would have liked there being a central base to do those upgrades. But just like you can only do them in certain areas in Doom, right? Like Doom-esque. And there was some upgrades where once you completed parts of a level, that's where you got the upgrades for like your abilities. And then there was random like ball-shaped robots that would like float up, and that's where you spend your dust to upgrade your weapons. And so having those upgrades was something that was fun. One thing that I forgot on here was there's a tutorial level. The prologue is treated like a tutorial level. And then on top of the tutorial, when you go to upgrades, there's a video in the corner, and like I was on controller, you would click right thumbstick and it would expand the video and it would show you like what the upgrades do. And then throughout the game, when you encountered new things, tips would pop up and you could watch the little video clip that was showing what the tip was talking about and then continue your gameplay. So just the tutorial and tips was another good thing. But those are my cons. Where the story was not that interesting. Although the gameplay was awesome. It was a little too short. There was no ADS on weapons that looked like they should have it. The mouse in all but one cutscene didn't move while they talked. My so-so is there's no home base or like home screen to launch from. It was just like, okay, mission complete. Here's your mission stats. Continue. Then you go right into the next mission. My pros were the graphics were really good. I thought the game was beautiful. The gameplay pace was a lot of fun. Except for some crashes, which were a quick, easy fix. The performance was great. The game was unique in its setting, its enemies, the cores mechanic, and the ball mechanic. Another pro was that there was upgrades for both your abilities and your guns, and then also that there was a lot of tutorials and tips to help people navigate the intricate parts of the game. So overall, I really enjoyed it. It was very Doom-esque, even down to you have a weapon wheel where you get new weapons unlocked as you go through levels. They appear, you pick them up. Now you have a new weapon in the weapon wheel, as well as random power weapons like a Gatling gun. So there was all of that kind of stuff that was very Doom-esque. This is pretty much a sci-fi Doom Eternal, although a good amount shorter, with only 2 boss fights, which weren't very difficult. Another con I should have is this game just in general wasn't very difficult. You start off with 1 extra life. I collected 4 or 5 throughout the game. I finished with 3 extra lives. I died twice. I never fully died, and even my deaths, I could have easily played them to have not died. And I was just playing a little reckless and sloppy when it happened. So the game's just not very difficult. I mean, I played on normal difficulty like I normally do. Maybe on the hard difficulty it's harder, but the normal felt like easy for a lot of other games. That was it wasn't quite as hard as Doom. So it's a little easier, more sci-fi Doom. But we do need some more boomer shooters, and of course this is one. Overall, I really did enjoy the short time I spent with this game. I would recommend it for anybody who thinks a game that's under 4 hours is worth $35 or $40. Otherwise, I'd probably say wait for it to come on sale. But the gameplay was great. The graphics were great. I doubt we will, but I'd love to see a DLC for this game. I do have to knock the score down a little bit for the story being uninteresting, because if I'm going to play a single-player game, I do like there to be a good narrative. And I do have to knock it down slightly for the game being so short. But this game still overall gets about a 7.5 from me. If the game was about 6 hours and the story was a little more interesting, based off of the gameplay, I could easily see this being an 8, 8.5. But with the uninteresting story in the short game, it does get knocked down to a 7.5. I think it was worth my $35 I spent. I think it would be worth $40. But that's something you'd have to decide for yourself. I would definitely recommend it. If it ever comes on sale and it drops below 30, I would buy it instantly and play it all in that one setting. I do recommend it, definitely, and it is cheaper than most games. But that's my thoughts on Metal Eden, the new sci-fi boomer shooter. I think it's only PS5 and Xbox Series for consoles, and then, of course, it's on PC as well. So check it out for yourself. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you like game reviews, Apex content, COD content. If you like single-player content, that's linked down below. Car content is also linked down below, and all my related social medias. And comment down below what you think of Metal Eden, the boomer shooter genre as a whole, or whatever. But thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good day. Bye.